take a moment to arrive. For a little while, you don't have to search for anything. You don't have to reach for the right answer or fix yourself before you can rest. Just be here, exactly as you are. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. Tonight, we are going to explore an old and profound idea from the Buddhist tradition. It is the idea that what we spend so much of life looking for may already be here. Most of us know the feeling of searching for peace, searching for certainty, searching for the right teacher, the right belief, the right path, the one missing piece that will finally make everything settle. And yet, the more we reach, the more tired the heart can become. The Buddha saw this clearly. People came to him carrying questions from every corner of life. Questions about suffering, the soul, the future, the meaning of it all. And again, he turned them back towards something simpler, toward what they could see for themselves. This breath, this moment, this simple place beneath all the noise of the mind. That is the journey we will follow tonight. Not towards some faraway truth, but a slow return to what has been here all along. There is nothing you need to figure out tonight. Nothing to memorize. Nothing you have to understand perfectly. Just rest and listen, and let these stories point you gently back to what was never truly missing. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk. Let us begin. The word Buddha means one who is awake. Before the scriptures were gathered, before the temples and the ceremonies, there was simply a person who woke up, awake to this moment, this breath, this life, exactly as it is. Most of us come to wisdom traditions the way we come to everything else. We come looking for answers. We arrive with our arms full of questions. What is the soul? What happens when we die? Why do we suffer? Is there a meaning behind all of this? And we hope that somewhere, in some book or some teacher or some faraway monastery, the answers are waiting for us. And once we collect them, we will finally feel at peace. The Buddha offered something different. When people came to him with their great metaphysical questions, he often set the questions gently aside. He compared such a person to a man struck by an arrow who refuses to let anyone remove it until he knows who shot it and what the bow was made of and what feathers were on the shaft. The man would die still asking. What matters, the Buddha taught, is the arrow. The suffering in this very moment and the peace that is possible in this very moment. Tonight begins with a story about this kind of searching. It comes from an old Eastern tale about a great gathering of birds, and it has been told in many lands, in many forms. Here is one way of telling it. Long ago, in a wide green valley ringed by mountains, all the birds of the world gathered for a council. Sparrows and herons, finches and owls, birds of the marsh and birds of the high cliffs, thousands upon thousands, until the trees bent under their weight. They had gathered because of a rumor. It was said that somewhere, beyond the farthest mountains, there lived a great king of birds, a being of such wisdom and such beauty that anyone who saw him would never be troubled again. No bird in the valley had ever seen him, but all of them, in their own way, felt the ache of his absence. Their lives were full of flying and feeding and building nests, and yet something always seemed to be missing. An elderly crane, who had traveled farther than any of them, rose and spoke. "I have heard of this king all my life," she said. They say his palace lies beyond 7 mountains. The way is long. Many who set out will turn back, but those who reach him will understand everything they have ever longed to understand. A great noise went up from the gathering. Some birds cheered. Others began at once to make excuses. "I cannot leave my pond," said a duck. "Everything I need is there. The water is sweet and the reeds are thick. Surely the king would not ask me to abandon it. And I have my treasures," said a magpie. "My nest is full of bright and shining things. It has taken me years to gather them. Who will guard them while I am gone?" "I am too small," whispered a wren. "The winds over those mountains would scatter me like a leaf." The old crane listened to each excuse, and to each bird she said the same thing. "What you are holding is smaller than what you are missing." In the end, a great flock rose into the sky, so vast that its shadow moved over the valley like a cloud. And the journey was long, just as the crane had said. Over the first mountain, the birds who loved comfort turned back. Over the third, the birds who loved their possessions grew heavy with worry and turned back. Over the fifth, storms came, and many of the frightened ones scattered for home. The flock grew smaller and smaller. On a bare ridge one night, huddled out of the wind, the wren crept close to the old crane. "I want to go home," the wren said. "I told you I was too small for this." The crane opened one eye. "And yet here you are, 5 mountains from home. Tell me, little one, who carried you this far?" The wren thought about it. "My own wings," she said slowly. "Then perhaps," said the crane, settling back to sleep, "you are not the size you believed you were." Those who remained were changed by the journey itself. They learned to rest on bare rock and be content. They learned to share the little food they found. They learned that the wind they had feared could also carry them if they stopped fighting it. Slowly, without noticing, they let go of nearly everything they had carried from the valley. Their excuses, their treasures, their old ideas about themselves. At last, a small band of birds, worn and quiet, crossed the 7th mountain. In the valley below stood the palace, simple and still, its gates open. They landed in the courtyard and folded their tired wings. Their hearts pounded. After all this way, they would finally see the king. A gatekeeper came out to meet them. He looked at them for a long moment, and his eyes were kind. "You wish to see the king of birds," he said. "We have crossed 7 mountains," said the wren, who to everyone's surprise had made the whole journey. "We have lost our homes and our treasures and our friends along the way. Please, let us see him." The gatekeeper opened a door and led them into a great hall. The hall was empty except for one thing. Along the far wall stretched a still, clear pool of water, smooth as polished silver. "Look," said the gatekeeper. The bird stepped forward and looked into the water. And there, gazing back at them, they saw the king. His feathers were worn from the wind. His eyes were clear from the long journey. He was not one bird, but all of them, their own faces, reflected together in the stillness. For a long time, no one spoke. Then the wren began to laugh, softly at first, and then with her whole small body. "We flew across the world," she said, "to find what was flying with us the entire way." The seekers were the sought. What the birds were looking for was never in the palace. It was revealed by the journey the way a lamp is revealed when the dust is wiped from its glass. Every mountain they crossed took something from them. Comfort, possessions, fear, pride. And what remained, when all of that fell away, was what they had been seeking from the beginning. The Buddha pointed to this again and again. By oneself is wrong done, he taught, and by oneself one is made pure. No one can purify another. The teachers, the teachings, the long journeys, all of them matter, but they matter the way a finger pointing at the moon matters. The finger is not the moon. The map is not the valley. Sooner or later, every sincere seeker must turn and look into the still water. You do not have to cross 7 mountains to do this. The mountains in the story are made of the things we carry. The duck's pond is our comfort. The magpie's shining collection is everything we cling to. The wren's fear is our own quiet certainty that we are too small for peace, too ordinary, too far behind. Every one of those can be set down right where you are. Tonight, in this chair, in this bed, in this breath. Perhaps you have felt this once or twice yourself in some small, unguarded moment. Standing at a window while the kettle warmed. Walking to the car under a sky just turning dark. For a few seconds the mind stopped reaching, and everything was strangely complete. The world did not become more beautiful in those moments. You simply stopped searching long enough to see that it already was. Those moments are glimpses of the still water in the Great Hall. The tradition we are resting in tonight is really just the art of visiting that water on purpose and staying a little longer each time. Think of how many questions live inside a single ordinary evening. The moon rises, and something in us wonders where the light comes from and where it goes. An owl calls once from a far tree, and we wonder what it knows of the dark that we do not. Snow falls without a sound, each flake finding its own place, and we wonder how anything so quiet can cover a whole world. A river stone sits in the current, smooth and patient, and we wonder how many years of water it took to soften it. These questions are not really asking for answers. They are the heart's way of leaning closer to life. A child asks 100 questions a day, and if you listen carefully, you will notice the child does not always wait for the answer. The asking itself is the joy. The asking is a form of love. Somewhere along the way, most of us lose this. Our questions grow anxious. We stop asking in order to wonder and start asking in order to be certain. We want to know we are right. We want to know we are safe. We want to know how the story ends. And that kind of asking never rests, because life does not hand out certainty. It hands out mornings and evenings, meetings and partings, one breath after another. The Buddhist path begins by noticing the difference. There is a grasping kind of asking that tightens the heart, and there is an open kind of asking that softens it. The first one searches. The second one listens. In one of the oldest collections of the Buddha's sayings, the Dhammapada, there is a verse that says the mind comes before all things. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. If the mind approaches life clutching and demanding, the world feels like a locked door. If the mind approaches life listening, the same world opens like a field at dawn. Nothing outside has to change. Only the quality of our attention. There is a story about a young monk who carried the anxious kind of asking all the way up a mountain. He had come to an old temple full of ambition. He had read many scriptures and memorized many verses, and he was proud of it, though he would not have said so. For months he followed the master around the temple grounds, asking question after question. What is the true nature of mind? What did the ancient sages mean by emptiness? Which of the sutras holds the deepest teaching? The master answered some questions and let others drift away like smoke. This only made the young monk ask more. One evening, rain began to fall on the temple. It drummed softly on the wooden roof and dripped from the eaves into the courtyard stones. The young monk found the master sitting by the open door, doing nothing at all, and he could not help himself. "Master," he said, "I have been here for many months. I have asked you 100 questions, but you still have not shown me the gate to the way. Where is the entrance? Where do I begin?" The master was quiet for a while. Then he asked, "Do you hear the rain?" The young monk paused. In all his asking, he had not noticed it. Now he listened. The soft drumming on the roof, the single drops falling from the eaves, each one landing in its own moment. The hush beneath it all. "Yes," he said, "I hear it." "Enter there," said the master. Enter there. The gate the young monk had been searching for opened in the sound of the rain, met completely, with nothing added. This is what it means to listen with the heart. It is the simplest thing in the world, and we pass it by 1,000 times a day. We listen to reply. We listen to judge. We listen with one ear while the mind rehearses tomorrow. And all the while, beneath our busy hearing, the world goes on offering itself. Rain on a roof. A dog barking 2 streets over. The breath of someone sleeping nearby. The heart listening the old masters spoke of is not a technique. It is what happens naturally when the questions grow quiet. You hear a sound, and for one clean moment, it is just a sound. You are not naming it, judging it, or using it. You are simply with it. And in that moment, there is no searching, because nothing is missing. The Buddha encouraged exactly this kind of direct knowing. When the people of a certain village told him they were confused because so many teachers passed through with so many conflicting doctrines, he did not hand them one more doctrine. He told them not to accept a thing merely because it was tradition or scripture or the word of a respected teacher, and that includes his own words. "Know for yourselves," he said. "When you see for yourselves what leads to harm, set it down. When you see for yourselves what leads to peace, live inside it. Know for yourselves." It may be the most generous instruction any teacher has ever given. It means the final authority on peace is not far away, in a palace beyond 7 mountains. It is the quiet awareness resting here in this very moment. The one that hears the rain. The one that has been listening all along, beneath every anxious question, patient as a river stone. Somewhere in the space around you right now, there is a sound. Perhaps the hum of the night, perhaps wind or distant traffic, or only the soft rhythm of your own breathing. Whatever it is, let yourself hear it the way the young monk heard the rain. Completely, without needing it to mean anything. If a question drifts through the mind, that is fine. Let it drift. You do not have to answer it tonight. Questions are welcome here, the way birds are welcome in a valley. They can land, rest, and lift away again. You are the valley, not the birds. And in this listening there is nothing to find. The searching has paused, and yet nothing is missing. This is a small taste of what the whole tradition points to. What we are looking for is doing the looking. What we are seeking has been flying with us the entire way. Let us rest here for a moment. There is no hurry at all. Feel the quiet, and when it feels natural, we will continue on together. In the Buddha's own lifetime, the roads of ancient India were crowded with teachers. Wandering philosophers moved from village to village, each with a doctrine, each with followers, each certain the others were wrong. Some taught that the soul was eternal. Some taught there was no soul at all. Some taught elaborate rituals, and some taught that rituals were useless. The old texts say there were 62 views of reality in circulation, all of them argued in the town squares with great passion. The people of that time felt exactly what we feel now. They were surrounded by voices, and every voice claimed to hold the truth. The Buddha watched all of this with a kind of tender amusement. He once said that these quarreling teachers were like men in a dark room, each holding a different part of an elephant, each describing something real, and each mistaking his handful for the whole animal. He did not say they were liars. He said they were holding pieces. That is where tonight's path continues. We have been following one simple thread. What you are searching for is already here. And nothing hides that simple truth more thoroughly than a mind stuffed full of other people's stories about it. So this module is about the stories. The ones we inherit, the ones we collect, the ones we argue over. And it is about the deep, quiet relief of setting them down. Let us begin with a story about a widow who received 3 answers to one question. Long ago, in a village at the edge of a great plain, there lived a weaver and his wife. They had been married for more than 40 years. They had raised children, buried parents, mended each other's clothes and each other's sorrows, and grown old side by side, like 2 trees whose roots had long ago intertwined. When the weaver died, peacefully and in great age, the whole village mourned with her, because everyone had loved him. The widow grieved as anyone grieves, but beneath her grief lay a question that would not let her rest. Where had he gone? What had become of the one she loved? In that region there lived 3 renowned teachers, and in time she visited each of them. The first teacher lived in a temple of golden bells. He received her warmly and said, "Do not weep. I have prayed for your husband every day since his passing, and I have seen where he has gone. He dwells now in a paradise in the west, a land of light, and he is at peace among the blessed." And the widow felt comforted, and she went home. But some weeks later she visited the second teacher, who lived in a cave above the river, and he too received her warmly. "Do not weep," he said. "I have kept vigil for your husband, and I have seen his path. He has already returned. His spirit has entered a new life, small as a seed, and he is beginning the journey again." And the widow walked home slowly, because this was a beautiful answer too, and it did not agree with the first one at all. Still later, she sought out the third teacher, an old woman, famous for her visions, who lived among the hills. "Ah," said the old woman before the widow had even asked her question. "I am glad you have come. I have seen your husband. He has become one with the great river of life itself. He is in the rain now, and in the barley, and in the wind, through the doorway of your house." And the widow thanked her and left, and by the time she reached the plain, she did not know whether to feel comforted or completely lost. 3 teachers, 3 visions. 3 beautiful answers, and no way to lay them side by side. At last, she climbed the mountain behind the village, where a hermit lived in a small stone hut. She told him everything. The paradise in the west, the new life beginning, the great river. She told him she no longer knew what to believe, and that her not knowing had begun to hurt more than her grief. The hermit listened all the way to the end. He poured her a cup of water and let the silence settle around them. Then he said, "May I ask you something?" "Please," said the widow. "When you sit alone in the evening, in the quiet, with all 3 of those stories set aside, when it is just you and your breath and 40 years of love, what do you know then? Not what you have been told. What do you know?" The widow sat with the question for a long time. The wind moved over the mountain. Somewhere below, a bell rang once and was still. "I know that I loved him," she said at last. "I know that love does not feel finished. I know that everything I have ever watched, the barley, the seasons, my own 2 hands, changes and keeps changing, and that he and I were part of that too. I know that when I stop asking where he went and simply sit with what we were, there is peace in it. Underneath the missing him, there is peace." The hermit nodded slowly. "Then you are wealthier than all 3 of your teachers," he said. "They gave you stories. You have found what you know." Every tradition on earth has offered its answer to the widow's question and to 100 questions like it. Where do we come from? Where do we go? What lies behind the veil of this world? The answers fill libraries. They are carried in songs and scriptures and ceremonies, and many of them are beautiful, and they cannot all be true in the way a stone in your hand is true. The Buddha understood this, and his response was remarkably practical. He compared his own teaching to a raft. "A traveler comes to a wide river," he said. "The near shore is dangerous, the far shore is safe, and there is no bridge. So the traveler binds together grass and branches, makes a raft, and paddles across. Now," the Buddha asked, "having reached the far shore, should the traveler hoist the raft onto his head and carry it with him for the rest of his life, out of gratitude? Or should he leave it at the water's edge and walk on, unburdened? Even my teaching," the Buddha said, "is a raft. It is for crossing over. It is for letting go of." He wanted no one carrying his words around like furniture. He wanted people to use them, cross the river, and walk free on the other side. This is a rare thing for any teacher to say, and it tells us how to hold every story we have ever been given. Hold it lightly. Ask what it is for. A story that carries you toward peace is a good raft. A story you carry that grows heavier every year, that you defend and worry over and measure yourself against, has quietly become cargo. The story was never the point. The far shore was the point. The peace was the point. There is a gentle truth hidden inside all that confusion the widow felt. Confusion is often a sign of honesty. The person who has never been confused has usually just stopped looking. Every sincere seeker in every age has stood in that same crowded marketplace of voices, feeling lost. Feeling lost in a marketplace simply means you have noticed there is more than one stall. So if you have ever felt bewildered by it all, if you have read the books and heard the teachers and come away with more questions than you began with, you are in the oldest and best of company. The widow felt it. The seekers of the Buddha's time felt it. Bewilderment is what an honest mind feels when it takes the world seriously. and it carries a hidden gift, because the mind that admits it does not know is finally soft enough to learn. Certainty is hard ground. Nothing new can take root in it. The confused heart, strange as it sounds, is fertile. There is another story about a seeker who spent half her life collecting rafts. She was born in a small town, the daughter of a fruit seller, and from childhood she burned with one desire. She wanted wisdom, real wisdom, the kind she imagined the great sages possessed. When she came of age, she went to the teacher who lived nearest, a quiet man who kept a garden, and asked to study with him. "You are welcome to stay," said the gardener, "though I warn you, what I teach is very plain." She stayed a month. The gardener taught her to sit quietly, to breathe, to pull weeds, to notice things. It seemed far too simple. Surely real wisdom was grander than this. So she thanked him and moved on. She heard of a famous scholar in the north and studied scripture with him for 3 years, until she could recite whole books from memory. Then she heard of a mystic in the mountains and learned to fast and keep long vigils. Then a master of sacred chanting. Then a teacher of philosophy who could argue any position and its opposite. Decade after decade she traveled, and her mind became a great storehouse. She could speak of emptiness in 4 languages. She had opinions about every doctrine and every teacher, and she carried them all with her, everywhere, like a merchant who cannot stop acquiring goods. And still, at night, lying awake in one guest room or another, she felt the same ache she had felt as a girl. Nothing she had collected had touched it. She was no longer young when she finally admitted this to herself. And with nowhere left to go, she went home. The old gardener was still there. Stooped now, white-haired, moving slowly among his rows of vegetables. He looked up as she came through the gate, and he smiled as though she had been gone an afternoon. "You have returned," he said. "I have been everywhere," she said, and to her own surprise, she began to cry. "I have studied with the greatest teachers alive. I can recite the scriptures of 5 traditions, and I know nothing. I am as restless as the day I left." The gardener set down his trowel. He gestured to the bench beside the garden, the same bench where she had sat as a young woman. "Sit," he said. "Breathe. Notice things." She stared at him. "That is what you told me 40 years ago." "It is what was true 40 years ago," said the gardener. "It has patiently remained true while you were traveling." She sat down on the bench. She was too tired to argue, too tired to seek, too tired to add even one more idea to the storehouse. And in that tiredness, something wonderful happened. The storehouse stayed shut. She simply sat. She heard the evening birds. She felt the warmth of the sun leaving the stones. She noticed her own breath, moving in and out, patient as ever, having accompanied her across the whole world and asked nothing in return. The ache she had carried since childhood grew very quiet. It was still there, but it had changed. It no longer felt like something missing. It felt like something waiting, and the waiting was over. She began to laugh through her tears. Half a lifetime of travel, and the bench had been here the entire time. There is one more small story worth telling here, about a man in a mountain village who had misplaced his own knowing. He was a good man, a maker of sandals, but he had one weakness. He believed whatever the last person told him. If a neighbor said the winter would be hard, he worried all autumn. If another neighbor said the winter would be mild, he relaxed completely until a third neighbor disagreed. His opinions changed with every conversation, and the village children joked that you could tell who he had spoken to last by the look on his face. One day, worn out by it, he walked to the edge of the village where a respected elder lived, a woman known for her plain good sense. "Everyone says I am a fool," he told her. "Tell me honestly, am I a fool?" The elder looked at him kindly. "You have come to ask me whether you are a fool. What do you think yourself?" The sandal maker hesitated. "I do not know. Some days I think I am not. But then someone tells me I am, and I believe them." "There it is," said the elder. "The trouble was never in your head. You have a perfectly good mind. The trouble is that you keep handing it to other people. A man who asks his neighbors whether the sky is blue when he is standing under the sky has not lost his sight. He has only stopped using it." The sandal maker walked home under that same sky, and for the first time in years, he looked up and decided for himself. The Buddha had a word for how his teaching was meant to be approached. Ehipassiko, in the old language, come and see. His teaching was a come and see teaching. Sit, breathe, notice things, and watch what is true reveal itself in your own experience. Belief was never the entrance fee. Attention was. So what do we do with all the stories? The ones from our childhood, the ones from books, the ones from the 3 teachers, the ones we tell ourselves at 2 a.m. We do not have to burn them. We do not have to win the argument about which one is right. We simply set them down for the night, the way you set down a heavy bag inside the door. The bag is not evil. You are just done carrying it today. Notice how the body responds to that. Somewhere in the shoulders, in the jaw, in the space behind the eyes, something has been holding all those stories upright. Managing them, defending them. When they are set down, even for an hour, that something gets to rest. This is available every single evening. It is one of the oldest kindnesses you can offer yourself. And underneath the stories, what remains is what remained for the widow on the mountain. What you know. Not much, perhaps. Love was real. Things change. There is peace beneath the questions when the questions grow still. It is not a grand doctrine. It would not win any debate in the town square. But it is yours. It was found and not received, and no teacher on any road can take it from you. The searching can rest here. What is true has patiently remained true all this time, like a bench in a garden. Let us pause together and be still for a little while. There is nothing to figure out. When it feels right, we will go on. On the night of his awakening, the Buddha sat alone beneath a great tree. He had spent 6 years searching. He had studied with the most famous masters of his time and mastered everything they taught. He had tried austerity so severe that he nearly died of it. Every path anyone could recommend, he had walked to its end. And the peace he sought was not at the end of any of them. So, on that night, he stopped consulting. He sat down, settled his body, and turned his attention to what was actually happening. His breath, the sensations rising and passing, the thoughts appearing and dissolving like clouds crossing an empty sky. Hour after hour, he simply watched, with a steadiness no distraction could shake. And as the morning star rose, something in him opened. The old accounts say he touched the earth with one hand, as if to say, "This ground is my witness." What he had realized, he had seen for himself, directly, the way you see your own hand. A Zen master, many centuries later, described that night in the plainest possible words. He said the Buddha simply believed his own eyes and ears. Things are as they are, and when he saw them clearly, he was free. That is the heart of this module. After all the stories are set down, a question remains. What do we actually know? Not what we have read, or been told, or hope is true. What have we seen with our own eyes so many times that no authority on earth could talk us out of it? The answer, it turns out, is short. And that short answer holds more peace than all the libraries. An old tale, told in the mountain countries, follows two travelers and one storm. In the old days, two merchants were crossing a high mountain pass, each headed to the market town on the other side. They did not know each other. They had simply fallen in step on the trail, the way travelers do, one older and one younger, and they walked together for company. Halfway across the pass, in the late afternoon, a storm gathered. It came the way mountain storms come, all at once. The sky turning the color of slate, the wind bending the small pines flat, the thunder rolling from ridge to ridge like an enormous drum. The two men sheltered under an overhang of rock and watched it together. "This is a terrible sign," the younger man shouted over the wind. "Do you feel it? The mountain is furious." The older man watched the rain come down in silver sheets. "I feel rain," he said. "Cold rain, and a good deal of it." "You feel nothing more than that?" "I feel glad we found this rock," the older man said, and pulled his cloak around him. For 1 hour the mountain roared. Lightning stood for an instant on the far peak like a white tree, and then it passed, as storms do, and the evening came out washed and shining, and the two men went their separate ways. In the market town, that night, the younger merchant sat by the fire at an inn and told his story. "It was an omen," he said to the gathered listeners. "I have never seen the sky so angry. The mountain was warning me. I had been planning a risky trade, and now I will not make it. When the heavens shout like that, only a fool refuses to listen. That storm changed the course of my life." On the other side of town, at another inn, the older merchant sat by another fire. "It was a blessing," he told his listeners. "I have crossed that pass 40 times, and I have never seen anything so magnificent. The lightning on the peak, the whole sky alive. I felt 20 years old again. I felt the gods were putting on a festival just for us. That storm was the finest hour of my journey. An omen and a blessing. A warning and a festival. Two stories, told the same night, about the same hour of rain. And up on the pass, in the darkness, the mountain stood exactly as it had stood for 1,000 years. Rain had fallen on it. Wind had crossed it. The mountain had not been angry, and it had not been celebrating. It had simply been a mountain in the rain. The storm was real. The meanings were made. Both merchants saw the same rain and the same lightning, and each wove a story around it, and each walked away, living inside his story instead of inside the weather. We do this all day long. Something happens, plain as rain, and within moments the mind has wrapped it in interpretation. A friend does not reply to a message, and by evening we have written a whole drama about what it means. A door closes at work, and we call it a disaster, though we cannot actually see around the corner of a single day. The event is one thing. The story is another, and most of our suffering lives in the second thing, in the telling, in the meanings we add and then mistake for the world. And notice something else the two merchants reveal. For every opinion we hold, somewhere there is a person of equal sincerity holding its opposite. This has been true of every belief you have ever carried. Whatever you have concluded about the weather, the neighbors, the times you live in, or the meaning of your own story, someone somewhere has watched the same facts and concluded otherwise and believed it just as firmly. Once you have truly seen this, it becomes very hard to go to war over an opinion again. Opinions begin to look like what they are: weather passing over a mountain. This is why the Buddha kept pointing people back to what can actually be seen. Opinions divide the merchants. The rain fell on both of them alike. And when we look honestly at what we have all seen, again and again, without exception, a few facts stand there like mountains. The first is that things change. Every single thing. You have watched it your whole life. Summer has never once refused to become autumn. The body you had at 7 is gone, and the one you had at 20, and every feeling you were ever certain would last forever, has softened, shifted, and made way for another. There is a verse in the Dhammapada that says all conditioned things are impermanent, and that when a person sees this clearly, with wisdom, they turn away from suffering. It sounds austere until you feel what it really offers. If everything changes, then no storm is final. No grief is a life sentence. No tangled situation stays tangled. Change is not the enemy of peace. Change is the reason every hard night has been followed, so far, by a morning. The second thing we know is that life comes in pairs. Sweet and bitter, meeting and parting, praise and blame, gain and loss, the warm day and the cold one. No life has ever been built out of only the pleasant half, and no honest person claims otherwise. There is strange comfort in this. When difficulty arrives at your door, it does not mean you have failed or been singled out. It means you are alive, and life has come in, wearing one of its two faces, as it does in every house on earth. And the third thing, perhaps the most useful of all, you have felt, in your own chest, the difference between clutching and releasing. Everyone has. The tightness of gripping something, an argument, a plan, a person, a version of yourself, and the almost physical relief when the grip finally opens. No scripture is needed to establish this. Your own shoulders have been teaching it your whole life. Things change. Life comes in pairs. Grasping tightens, and letting go eases. Almost everything else is commentary. There is an old story about the Buddha and a woman who came to him carrying the heaviest thing a person can carry. She had lost someone she loved beyond all measure. The loss had come suddenly, and it had broken something in her. She could not accept it. She wandered from place to place asking for help, asking for a medicine, asking for anyone with the power to undo what had happened. People pitied her, but no one could give her what she asked, because no one has ever had it to give. At last someone said to her, "Go to the teacher who sits with his students near the edge of town. If anyone can help you, He can. So she came to the Buddha, and she knelt before him, and she poured out her grief. "They say you are the awakened one," she said. "Then awaken this. Give me back what I have lost. I will do anything." The Buddha looked at her for a long moment, and his eyes were full of kindness. He did not correct her. He did not give her a lecture on impermanence. He said, "I can help you. But first I need you to bring me something. Go into the town and bring me a single mustard seed. Only, it must come from a house that sorrow has never visited. A house where no one has been lost. Bring me that seed and then come back to me." Hope leapt up in her. A mustard seed. Every kitchen in town had a jar of them. She hurried to the first house and knocked. "Please," she said, "I need a mustard seed from a house that sorrow has never visited." The woman at the door was quiet for a moment. "You are welcome to a seed," she said softly. "But you have come to the wrong house for the other thing. We lost my father in the spring." At the second house, an old man shook his head slowly. "Sorrow knows this door well," he said. "Come in and rest, if you like, and I will tell you who we have loved and lost." She did not go in, not at that house. But at the third house, a young mother answered with a baby on her hip, and when she heard the question, her eyes filled. "My sister," she said simply, "2 winters ago. Sit with me a moment, will you?" People stopped saying her name, and I miss hearing it. So the grieving woman sat on the doorstep, and the young mother spoke of her sister, the way she laughed, the way she sang off key on purpose. And the 2 women, strangers an hour before, wept a little together, and something in the weeping was almost sweet. At the 4th house it was the same, and at the 5th. At every door, when she asked her question, the same silence fell, and then the same gentle answer, and often a story. This one had lost a father, that one a brother, this one a friend of 50 years. Some wept as they spoke. Some smiled at old memories. Every single house, without exception, knew what she knew. She walked the town until evening, and somewhere along the way, without her noticing exactly when, her errand changed. She stopped hurrying. She began to sit with the people who answered their doors, and listen, and sometimes hold their hands. By the time the lamps were being lit, she was no longer searching for the seed. She returned to the Buddha with empty hands and a different face. "You could not find the house," he said gently. "There is no such house," she said. "I thought sorrow had come only to me. I thought my door was the only one it knew. It has visited every home in that town and every home in the world." She was quiet, and then she said, "And in every one of those houses, people are still lighting their lamps, still cooking their evening meal, still going on, carrying what I carry." Nothing had been undone. What she had lost was still lost, but the loss had changed its shape. It was no longer a wall separating her from all the world. It had become a doorway into the world, into every house, into every heart that had ever loved someone. She stayed near the teacher after that, they say, and she found her peace, and she became known for her kindness to those newly arrived in grief. The Buddha gave her no doctrine that day. He gave her an errand, and the errand let her see for herself. This was always his way. Truth that is handed to us stays on the surface, like rain on hard ground. Truth that we discover soaks in and changes the soil. There is a real difference between the two, and you can feel it. You can read 100 descriptions of rain, its causes, its chemistry, its poetry, and know less of rain than a child who has stood in one downpour with her face turned up. The descriptions are about rain. The downpour is rain. The spiritual life, as the old masters understood it, is a long, gentle movement from the first kind of knowing to the second, away from the descriptions, into the downpour. The same is true of peace itself. Peace described is a pleasant idea. Peace felt, even for 3 breaths, is a homecoming. Whenever you have set down a worry, truly set it down, and felt the evening open around you, you were not thinking about peace. You were standing in it, the way the child stands in the rain. And once you have stood in it, no argument can convince you it does not exist, because you were there. That is the kind of knowing the Buddha trusted under the tree. Small, direct, and completely yours. And what a relief that the curriculum is so short. Things change. Life comes in pairs. Letting go eases the heart. Sorrow visits every house, and every house goes on lighting its lamps. You have already verified every one of these, in your own life, with your own eyes. Nothing more needs to be memorized tonight. Nothing needs to be believed. The few things you truly know are enough to rest on, the way the mountain rests under any weather at all. The storm passes. The mountain remains. The stories come and go. What you know stays quietly here. Let the mind settle for a moment, like evening coming to a mountain pass. There is no need to hold anything. When you feel ready, we will walk on together. In the forest monasteries of the Buddhist tradition, the meditation masters use a simple phrase that holds their whole teaching. They speak of the one who knows. They mean something you have met many times. When a thought passes through your mind, something notices it passing. When sadness rises, something is aware of the sadness, and that something is not itself sad. When you wake at 3 in the morning and the room is dark and quiet, something in you is already awake before the worrying starts, calm as still water, simply aware. That quiet awareness is the one who knows. It has been with you through every year of your life. It watched your childhood. It is reading these moments with you now. And according to the old masters, resting in it, rather than in the endless weather of thoughts, is the very heart of peace. You can catch a glimpse of it in the plainest moments. Perhaps you have been in the middle of a worried spiral, thoughts chasing thoughts, when a bird sang outside the window, and for one instant the whole spiral paused, and there was just the song, and something hearing the song. That something was not worried. It had been there underneath the worry all along, the way the sky is there underneath the clouds. The clouds can fill the whole view, and the sky is never harmed by them, never stained, never made smaller. The forest masters say we spend our lives living in the clouds when we could be resting as the sky. The Zen teacher Dogen said that truth is perfect and complete in itself. It is ever present, and it has always existed. And then he said something that sounds impossible until suddenly it sounds obvious. He said that not one of your steps has ever led you away from where you are. Think of how many steps we take in a lifetime, searching. And every one of them, according to Dogen, began and ended in the same place. Here. Tonight's whole journey has been circling this. What we search for is already present. In this module, we look at the searcher and at the strange and tender comedy of hunting everywhere for something that never left. story is told, in many lands, of an old seamstress and a lost needle. She lived in a small house at the edge of an ancient village, and she was known for two things: her beautiful stitching and her habit of saying wise things at unexpected moments. One evening, just as the light was turning gold, her neighbors found her outside on the road in front of her house, bent over, searching the dust. She moved slowly along the ruts, peering at the ground, sweeping her hand over the dirt. "What have you lost, grandmother?" asked a farmer on his way home. "My best needle," she said. "The silver one. I cannot sew without it." Well, the whole village loved her, so one by one they joined the search. The farmer set down his tools. Two young women left their water jars by the well. A merchant closed his shutters early. Soon 7 or 8 people were crawling along the road in the fading light, sifting the dust for a silver needle. "Was it near the gate that you dropped it?" asked one of the young women. "Search wherever you like, dear," said the old woman pleasantly. They searched as the gold light turned to grey. They searched until backs ached and knees were sore. Finally, the farmer stood up and stretched. "Grandmother," he said, "we have covered every finger of this road twice. Tell us exactly where you were standing when you dropped it. That will narrow the search." "Oh," said the old woman, still sweeping the dust with her palm. "I did not drop it on the road. I dropped it inside my house. Somewhere near my sewing bench, I think." The searchers went completely still. The two young women looked at each other. The merchant stood up slowly. "You dropped it inside your house," the farmer said carefully, "and we are searching the road." "Yes," said the old woman. "Grandmother, why in heaven's name are we searching out here?" She sat back on her heels and looked up at them, and there was a spark in her old eyes. "Because the light is better out here," she said. "Inside my house it is dim, and searching in there is uncomfortable. Out here there is still a little sun. It seemed easier." A few of them started to laugh, and then stopped, because she was watching them in a particular way. "Before you laugh at an old woman," she said, "answer me this. When your heart is heavy, where do you look for relief? You look in the market. You look in the wine shop. You look in the opinions of your neighbors and in 100 small distractions, anywhere the light seems bright and the searching seems easy. Yet where was the heaviness lost? Inside. It has never once been out here on the road. You have all spent years searching where the light is better." She stood up, brushed the dust from her knees, and smiled at them. "Thank you for your help. I will go and look where I dropped it." And she went inside and shut the door, and the villagers stood in the road for a long time. The senses face outward. That is their nature and their job. The eyes look out, the ears listen out, the hands reach out. And so when something feels missing, the search naturally begins out there, where all our equipment points. The marketplace of the world is bright and loud and full of promising stalls, and the inside of the house is dim and quiet, and no one is calling out any wares in there. So we search the road, sometimes for years. Some people search it their whole lives, and there is no shame in it. Everyone in the village was on their knees in that same dust. And notice what the searching actually costs. It is tiring in a particular way. You can spend a whole day in the bright marketplace, buying and comparing and being entertained, and come home more depleted than when you left, because the one thing you were really shopping for was never on any of the shelves. The tiredness so many people carry is often this exact tiredness. The exhaustion of the road. knees sore from dust that never held the needle. But the needle is in the house. The piece we are missing was lost somewhere near the heart, and that is the only place it has ever been. The Buddha put it without any decoration at all. The heart is tangled from within, he taught, and it is untangled from within. The whole path he laid out, all the years of it, is really just the walk from the bright road back through one's own doorway. One thing makes the walk easier than it looks. The house is not empty. Something is waiting in there, and it is friendly. It is the one who knows. The moment you turn your attention inward, even for a few breaths, you meet it. The quiet awareness behind your eyes. It is not dim at all once you are inside. It has its own light. There is another story, a very tender one, about a little girl who lived with her mother and father in a cottage at the edge of a great forest. She loved that forest. She knew the paths near her home the way she knew her own hands, and she was allowed to wander them in the afternoons, gathering berries and interesting stones, as long as she came home before the light failed. One warm afternoon, chasing a butterfly, she wandered farther than she had ever gone. One unfamiliar path led to another. When the butterfly finally lifted over the treetops and vanished, she looked around and realized that nothing looked like home. The trees were taller here. The light came down in unfamiliar patterns. She walked one way, and then another, and the paths only grew stranger. She was a sensible little girl, so she did not panic. But as the afternoon stretched on, her legs grew tired, and the first cool breath of evening moved through the leaves. She came at last to a small clearing where a great smooth stone sat in the grass, still holding the warmth of the day. The clearing was a kind place. Ferns grew soft around its edges, and the last light lay across the grass like honey. She sat down against the stone to think about what to do, and the stone was warm against her back, and the evening birds were singing their settling songs, the ones that mean the day is folding itself up. She decided she would rest for just a moment and then find the path. Her eyes closed. The bird song grew distant and sweet, and because she was so very tired, she fell fast asleep against the warm stone, safe as an egg in a nest, while the first stars came out above the clearing. At home, her mother and father saw the light beginning to fail, and their daughter's chair empty. Her father lit a lantern and went into the forest, calling her name. Her mother went to the neighbors, and soon a dozen lanterns were moving through the trees, and a dozen voices were calling. They searched the near paths, and then the far ones. The moon rose. The little girl, deep in the sleep that only children sleep, heard nothing. Once, a lantern passed within 100 steps of her clearing, its light sliding over the ferns, and moved on into the dark, so close, and she slept peacefully through it, and the stone kept her warm. All night, the lanterns moved through the forest, and in the first grey light of morning, her father, hoarse and exhausted, pushed through a curtain of branches into a small clearing, and there she was, curled against a great stone, fast asleep, with dew in her hair, completely unharmed. He shouted with joy. The shout woke her. She sat up, blinking in the pale light, and saw her father running toward her across the grass, and she leapt to her feet and threw her arms open. "Papa," she cried, "I found you." He laughed and wept and swept her up. He had searched all night. She had slept by a stone, and she was not wrong. From inside her waking, he was simply, wonderfully there, found. "I found you." It is the perfect thing for her to say, and it is the perfect description of every awakening, great or small, in the history of the human heart. Because it always feels like that. When peace finally comes, after all our searching, it never feels manufactured. It feels recognized. It feels like something that was there all along, calling our name through the trees while we slept. People who touch a moment of real stillness almost never say, "Look what I built." They say, "It was here the whole time." The girl slept and was found and woke, saying, "I found you," and both things are true, and they are the same thing. This is why the great teachers of every tradition sound less like people delivering news and more like people reminding us of something. The Buddha's authority was of this kind. He described the human heart with such accuracy that his listeners kept discovering they already agreed. Craving leads to suffering. The mind is restless and hard to guard, and the tamed mind brings happiness. As a solid rock is unshaken by the wind, so the wise remain steady through praise and blame. When people heard these things, something in them stood up and said, "Yes, I have seen this. I have always known this." The teaching did not install the knowing. It woke it. You have likely felt this yourself. Some line in a book, some sentence spoken by a friend, and a bell rings somewhere in your chest. The feeling is never quite like learning. Learning feels like receiving something new. This feels like remembering something old. Recognition. The word itself means to know again. All true wisdom, when it finally arrives as a homecoming. That is the one who knows, answering to its name. And Dogen's strange sentence begins to make sense. Not one of your steps has ever led you away from where you are. The little girl wandered far from home, and she never left the forest that held her cottage. The old woman searched the road, and her house stood behind her the entire time, door unlocked. However far the mind wanders, into the past, into worry, into the bright marketplace, awareness itself has never taken a single step. It is always exactly here. You cannot wander away from the one who knows, because the one who knows is what notices the wandering. We are, all of us, asleep beside the warm stone, closer to home than we think, already being searched for by what we are searching for. So tonight, the resting is simple. You do not need to hunt for the one who knows, because hunting is more searching, and we are done with searching for the evening. Instead, notice what is already happening. You are aware. Sounds are being heard. The weight of your body is being felt. Thoughts drift through, and something notices them drifting. That noticing needs no effort and no improvement. It is already complete, the way Dogen said. Already here, the way it has always been. If the mind wanders off down some bright road, let it. It will come back. It always comes back, because there is nowhere else, finally, to go. And each time it returns, it is met by the same quiet, patient awareness, holding still like a warm stone in a clearing, keeping your place. There is even a way to rest in this without doing anything at all. Simply let yourself be found. The little girl did not navigate her way home. She rested, and the search came to her, and the reunion happened by itself in the morning light. Some evenings, that is the whole practice. Stop navigating. Stop even trying to be peaceful, which is its own subtle form of searching. Lean back against what is already here. the way she leaned against the stone, and trust that what has always been looking for you knows the way to this clearing. Home was never lost. Only the path was, for a little while, and now the lanterns are coming through the trees. Let everything settle here for a moment. Rest in the quiet, unhurried, and when it feels natural to continue, we will go on side by side. The Buddha organized his entire teaching the way a good physician organizes a diagnosis. First, he named the condition. There is suffering in human life. Everyone who has lived a single year knows this, and he saw no point in pretending otherwise. Second, he named the cause, and this is where his genius lay, because the cause he pointed to was so close that everyone had missed it. The cause of our unnecessary suffering, he said, is grasping, clinging, the tight hold we keep on things that were always going to move. Third, he gave the good news. There is a release. When the grasping loosens, the suffering loosens with it, in exact proportion, like a rope going slack. And fourth, he described a path of living that makes the loosening natural. 4 truths. A whole life's medicine in 4 sentences. Everything we have gathered so far tonight flows into this. Things change and cannot be held. The stories we clutch grow heavy. The peace we search for is already present, waiting under the searching. And here, the teaching becomes wonderfully practical, because grasping is something you can actually feel tonight in your own hands and chest and jaw, which means letting go is something you can actually do. There is a story about an old forest monk who lived in a hut at the top of a long path in an ancient kingdom of rivers and green hills. He had lived in the forest for 50 years, and his reputation for wisdom had spread far beyond it, which amused him greatly. People climbed the path to see him with heavy hearts and complicated questions, and he received them all the same way. He would pour tea, look at them kindly, and ask one question: "Are you suffering today?" One morning a merchant arrived, wealthy and out of breath, his fine clothes dusty from the climb. He sat down heavily across from the old monk. "Are you suffering today?" the monk asked, pouring the tea. "Terribly," said the merchant. "My business partner has cheated me. My son will not follow the trade I built for him. My knees ache on stairs. I cannot sleep past the 3rd hour of night. I have come because they say you have the answer." The old monk nodded along, sipping his tea, as though hearing a report about the weather. "Ah," he said, "grasping today. It must be grasping today." The merchant blinked. "You did not hear me. I said my partner cheated me. My son." "I heard you," said the monk pleasantly. "A partner who behaved as partners sometimes do. A son who is walking his own road, as sons do. Knees that are aging, as knees do. And a man holding all 3 very tightly, and the holding hurts. Where there is suffering, there is grasping. I have looked into this for 50 years, and I have never once found an exception. So I should simply not care?" The merchant said, "Let my partner cheat me. Let my son wander off. Let it all fall apart." "Did I say that?" The old monk refilled the merchant's cup. "When your hand is cramped from gripping, and someone tells you to open your fingers, they are not telling you to cut off your hand. You will still have your hand. You will still have your business, your son, your knees. You will tend to all of them, probably better than before, because a relaxed hand works better than a cramped one. Only the gripping goes. The gripping was never helping. The gripping was only hurting the hand. The merchant sat with his tea for a long time. The forest made its quiet sounds around the hut. "How do I open the fingers?" he finally asked. "You have already begun," said the old monk. "You noticed they were closed." Later that same day, they say, a young woman climbed the path, a farmer's daughter with clear eyes and mud still on her sandals. The monk poured the tea and asked his question, "Are you suffering today?" She considered it honestly, looking out at the trees. "No," she said, sounding a little surprised. "Today, no. The rice is planted. My family is well. I walked up through the forest and the birds were singing the whole way." "Wonderful," said the old monk, beaming. "No grasping today. Enjoy the tea, enjoy the birds, and give my greetings to the forest on your way down." And that was the entire audience. She laughed about it for years afterward and said it was the best teaching she ever received. On the days the heart is open, there is nothing to fix. The old monk never manufactured a problem where none existed and never ignored one where it did. He only ever looked for the same single thing, because in 50 years it had never once been absent when suffering was present, and never once present when suffering was absent. Where there is suffering, there is grasping. It sounds too simple until you start checking it against your own evenings. Notice what the mind is usually doing when peace will not come. It is holding something, replaying a conversation from the afternoon, gripping it, turning it over, editing what should have been said, or holding a plan for tomorrow so tightly that tomorrow has already invaded tonight, or holding a person, insisting in the quiet of the heart that they be different than they are, kinder, closer, more like they used to be, or holding a version of ourselves, younger, further along, more finished, and measuring the days every hour against it. None of these are exotic sins. They are just fingers, closed. And the moment of noticing them is exactly what the old monk said it was. The beginning of opening. The body knows all of this before the mind does. Grasping is never only mental. When the mind clenches around a worry, somewhere the jaw sets, the shoulders creep upward, the breath grows shallow and high in the chest. You can read the mind's grip in the body the way you can read wind in the trees. And the kindness works in the other direction too. When the shoulders drop and the breath deepens, the thought that was being held so fiercely often loosens on its own, as though the fingers of the mind and the fingers of the body were the same fingers. They may well be. It helps to know what letting go actually is, because the words are easily misunderstood. Letting go is very different from pushing away. Pushing away is just grasping in reverse, the same tight energy pointed outward. And letting go is different from giving up, which has despair in it, and different from indifference, which has coldness in it. Letting go is warm. It is what your hand does around a bird you are releasing. The hold softens, the palm opens, and what was held is free to be what it is. You lose nothing real. You lose only the cramp. Let us follow this into one more story, an old one about a stream that came to the edge of a desert. The stream was born high in the mountains, from snow and hidden springs, and it had crossed half the world. It had cut through granite. It had leapt down waterfalls. It had wandered through forests, and fed 100 green valleys, and in all that long journey, no obstacle had ever stopped it. The stream was, understandably, rather confident. Then it reached the desert. The sands stretched to the horizon, gold and silent, without a single stone to flow around or a valley to flow down. The stream rushed forward as it always had, and the sand simply drank it. Every push forward vanished. The stream drew back, gathered its waters, and rushed again, and again the sand swallowed the effort without a trace. For the first time in its long life, the stream could not find a way. And out of the silence of that place, a voice spoke. It was the desert wind, which had crossed those sands 10,000 times. "Little stream," said the wind, "you cannot cross the sands that way. Rushing has carried you this far, and rushing ends here. If you hurl yourself forward, you will only become a marsh, and then nothing. There is a way across, but it is very different from anything you have done." "Tell me," said the stream. "You must let me carry you," said the wind. "Give yourself up into the air. Rise as vapor, light as breath. I will bear you over the whole desert, and on the far side there are mountains, and there I will set you down as rain, and you will run down those slopes and become a stream again. This is how water has always crossed the sands. There is no other door." The stream was afraid. "But if I rise into the air, I will lose myself. My current, my banks, the shape I have carried across the world. How do I know I will return? How do I know what falls on those far mountains will still be me?" The wind was quiet for a moment, in the way of things that have seen this fear many times. "You will lose the shape," the wind admitted. "The shape was never the essence. You were never really the banks or the current, or even this particular water. You are the flowing itself, and the flowing cannot be lost. It can only change form. You do not believe me, and that is all right. The snow on the peaks did not believe it would become a spring. The spring did not believe it would become a river. You have already changed form 100 times to get here, little stream. This is only once more." For a long while the stream lay still at the edge of the sands, holding on. And then, slowly, it stopped holding. It gave itself upward, into the warmth, into the wind, and the fear was there, and it rose anyway. The wind gathered it gently, as promised, and carried it high over the gold silence, farther than the stream had ever traveled by pushing. And on the far side, over green mountains, it fell as soft rain and gathered in the hollows and began to run downhill, laughing in its old voice, a stream again, the same flowing it had always been, with the whole second half of the world before it. Everything the stream feared losing was shape. Everything it actually was came through the crossing untouched. This is what the heart discovers each time it truly lets go of something. Beforehand, letting go always looks like loss, and often like disappearing altogether. If I release this grievance, who will guard my dignity? If I release this plan, who will I be without it? If I stop holding my loved ones to my hopes for them, does that mean I love them less? The grip always believes it is the only thing keeping us intact. And then the grip opens, because it must, or because we finally allow it, and we make the strange discovery the stream made. What we are is still here. What we are was never the shape. Only the cramp is gone, and in its place there is air and movement and the second half of the world. Every person has crossed a few deserts already. Think of something you once held so tightly you believed you could not survive its loss, a role, a plan, a chapter of life, and that life eventually asked you to release. The crossing was frightening, exactly as the stream's was. And here you are, on the far side of it, still flowing, changed in shape, and untouched in essence. The evidence of your own life agrees with the wind. Whatever the next desert is, and there is always a next one, you have crossed before, and the flowing came through every time. One of the great forest masters of the Buddhist tradition used to say that if you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. And if you let go completely, you will have complete peace. He was famous for reducing the whole vast library of the teachings, all the philosophy and the practices, down to 2 words a person could carry anywhere. Let go. When the mind tangles itself in some elaborate spiritual question, let go. When the day's business follows you into the night, let go. He taught that you could make these 2 words the whole of your practice for years, and the practice would never be exhausted, because life never runs out of things it is offering to teach you, to release. Let go. The words are so plain that the mind wants something grander. And they are the deepest teaching there is, because they are the 4 noble truths folded into a single motion. There is suffering. It is the grip. There is release. It is the opening. Everything else is detail. So tonight, the practice is the motion itself, done in the smallest and kindest way. Somewhere in your body, right now, there is a place that is holding on without being asked to. It is often the jaw, or the shoulders, or the small muscles around the eyes, or the hands. Find one of those places. You do not need to force anything. Simply bring your attention there, the way you would rest a hand on a friend's shoulder, and quietly offer it the 2 words. Let go. Feel what happens. Usually something softens, a little or a lot, all by itself, because the body has been waiting all day for permission. And if a thought is being held somewhere, tonight's replaying or tomorrow's rehearsal, you can offer it the same kindness. It does not have to be solved before morning. Nothing does. The wind knows the way across, and it has never once dropped the water it carried. Let go a little. That is enough for one evening. We will rest here a while. Let the breath come and go as it pleases, and when you feel like walking on, the path will be waiting. There is a verse in the Dhammapada, among the oldest words attributed to the Buddha, that says, "Oneself is one's own protector, oneself is one's own refuge." What other refuge could there be? Therefore, the verse says, "Tend yourself well, the way a horse trainer tends a fine horse." It is a homely image for such a deep teaching. Tend yourself the way a trainer tends a horse, with patience, with daily care, without cruelty and without neglect. And underneath the image sits one of the most freeing distinctions in all of the Buddha's teaching, one that can change the feeling of an entire life once it is truly seen. The distinction is this: in every life there are 2 territories. The first territory is vast. It contains other people, their choices and moods and opinions, the weather, the markets, the news of the world, the past, and most of the future. Over this territory we have almost no command at all. The second territory is small. It contains the state of our own heart and mind, how we meet what comes, what we water, and what we let wither in ourselves. Over this territory, and only this one, we have real influence. Nearly all human exhaustion comes from working the wrong territory. We labor day and night in the vast field that was never ours, trying to manage other people and rearrange the world, while our own small garden, the only ground that ever truly belonged to us, sits waiting behind the house. Tonight's theme has been that what we search for is already here. This module adds a gentle companion truth. What we are responsible for is already here too. Both of them live in the same small garden. There is a story about a sage who was asked, near the end of his long life, what he had learned. He lived in those days in a small house with a fig tree beside it, and a young traveler had come a great distance to see him, having heard that the old man had spent 80 years in prayer and study. "Tell me what you have found," the young man asked. 80 years of devotion. What did all those years teach you? The old sage smiled and looked out at his fig tree for a while. "I will tell you the truth of it," he said, "though it is a little embarrassing. When I was young, I was on fire. I prayed with my whole strength, and my prayer was this: give me the power to change the world. There is so much wrong in it, so much greed and cruelty and foolishness. Change the world through me." I prayed that way for 30 years, and the world went on exactly as it was. The young man nodded, listening. "By the middle of my life," the sage continued, "I had grown a little humbler. The world I saw was too large for me. So I narrowed my prayer. Give me the power to change those around me, I prayed. My family, my neighbors, my town. They are fewer and they know me. Surely that much can be done. I prayed that way for 30 more years, and my family and my neighbors and my town went on exactly as they were. The fig tree stirred in the afternoon wind. And now I am old," said the sage, "and my prayer has grown very small. These days I pray, change me. Simply that. Let me be a little kinder than yesterday, a little more patient with the fool I meet on the road and with the fool I meet in the mirror. Let my own heart be transformed. That is the whole prayer now." He laughed softly. "And here is the joke of my whole life, my young friend. This last prayer is the only one that was ever answered, and it is being answered. And I see now that if I had begun with this prayer all those years ago, I might have done some real good for my family and my neighbors and my town. I might even have changed some small corner of the world, because the only thing I was ever given the keys to was this one heart. I spent 60 years knocking on doors that were never mine, while my own stood open." The young traveler was quiet for a while. Then he said, "But Master, if everyone prayed only for themselves, who would work to mend the world? Is your small prayer not a kind of surrender?" "Ah," said the old sage, and his eyes brightened, because it was a good question. "Look at my fig tree. It has fed half the children of this town for 40 years. Do you know how? It has never once left this spot. It has never gone out to feed anyone. It only sank its roots deeper and grew sweeter, year after year, right where it stood. And the children came." He patted the young man's hand. "I am not telling you to abandon the world. I am telling you what the tree knows. Become deeply good, right where you are planted, and the mending happens through you, quietly, without a single door being knocked on." The only door we were given the keys to. Most of us spend enormous energy at all the other doors. Consider how much of an ordinary day's inner labor is spent trying to steer what cannot be steered. rehearsing the words that will finally make someone understand, replaying a decision someone else made, as though enough replaying could unmake it, managing, in the privacy of the mind, the behavior of relatives, colleagues, strangers in traffic, public figures we will never meet. None of this labor moves anything in the world by a hair. Other people remain, stubbornly and magnificently, other people. The Buddha observed that trying to control the uncontrollable is one of the most reliable recipes for suffering ever discovered, and that the more we insist someone be different than they are, the more we suffer, while they generally go on being exactly who they are, unbothered by our insistence. Seeing this clearly is a strange kind of relief, though it can sting at first. It is the relief of a person who has been pushing on a mountain for years and finally puts their arms down. The mountain never needed pushing. The arms are finally free for work that can actually be done. It can help to think of other people the way the old farmers thought of weather. Weather is real, and it matters, and it touches everything we do. A wise person watches it, prepares for it, enjoys the fine days and shelters through the storms. What a wise person never does is stand in the field arguing with it. Other people are weather. Their moods arrive from causes we mostly cannot see, gather, break, and pass. We can love them, respond to them, set out buckets when they are generous, and take shelter when they storm. Arguing with them in the privacy of our own head at midnight waters nothing and wearies everything. And there is real work. The small garden is small, but it is alive, and everything in a life ultimately passes through it. Every event of the vast territory, every word other people say, every turn of fortune, is finally received and experienced inside this one heart. Which means the condition of the heart quietly shapes the experience of everything. A tended heart meets a difficult day, and the day remains difficult, but it does not become poisoned. An untended heart meets a beautiful day and somehow finds the thorn in it. The garden is small, and it is everything. Let us look at one more story about two farmers and a dry season. They lived on neighboring plots of land in an old river valley, a young man who had recently inherited his fields and an elderly woman who had worked hers for 50 years. One spring, the rains that always came did not come. The sky stayed a hard bright blue, week after week, and the river dropped, and the whole valley began to worry. The young man spent his days in a fury at the sky. He watched the horizon from morning to evening. He complained at the well, complained at the market, cursed the clouds that formed and drifted past without falling. His fields, meanwhile, sat as they were. He was so occupied with the rain that had not come that he had little attention left for the land that had. The old woman worried too, for she was no fool, and she loved her land. But her days looked different. In the cool of each morning she was out among her rows, doing small things. She spread cut straw thickly around the roots of her plants, so the soil beneath stayed dark and damp long after the surface dried. She carried her washing water and cooking water out to the vegetables in the evening, a bucket here, a bucket there. She let one field rest entirely and gave its share of water to another. She planted the deep-rooted things her grandmother had taught her, the ones that find moisture far below where the eye can see. One evening, the young man leaned on the wall between their lands, watching her make her slow rounds with the bucket. "How can you keep puttering like that?" He burst out. "Look at the sky. There is no rain in it. There has been no rain in it for 2 months. What is the use of straw and buckets against a drought? The old woman set down her bucket and straightened her back. You are right about the sky, she said. I have no reach into it. I have lived under this sky for 70 years, and it has never once asked my opinion. The rain is the sky's business. She gestured at her rose, the mulched roots, the low green leaves holding on. This is my business. The straw, the buckets, the soil. Every morning I ask myself one question. What, today, is actually mine to do? And then I do that, and I let the sky keep its own counsel. And if the rain never comes? The young man asked. Then it will not have come, she said simply, and my soil will still be soft, and my roots will still be deep, and I will be ready for whatever season follows this one. Ready is the only thing I can be. Rained on is up to the sky. She picked up her bucket again. You spend your days farming the clouds, young man. I have never seen a single ear of barley come out of a cloud. It all comes out of the ground. The dry season broke eventually, as dry seasons do, with 3 days of soft grey rain that soaked the whole valley. And when it broke, the old woman's fields drank it in and surged, because the soil under the straw had stayed alive and the roots had stayed strong. Her harvest that year was smaller than a good year's, and it was enough. The young man's fields recovered slowly, for the ground had baked hard while he watched the horizon. They say he became a different kind of farmer after that. Neighbors would see him out in the cool of the morning, spreading straw, carrying buckets. And when someone at the market complained about the sky, he would smile a little and say what became a proverb in that valley. The rain is the sky's business. The soil is mine. The rain is the sky's business. The soil is mine. A whole philosophy of peace fits inside those 2 sentences. Notice that the old woman was never indifferent. She loved her land and worked it faithfully. Letting the sky keep its own counsel took nothing away from her care. This matters, because the mind sometimes protests that accepting what we cannot control means going cold, giving up on people, ceasing to care about the world. The old woman shows otherwise. Her acceptance was full of buckets and straw. Acceptance, in this tradition, is never the end of engagement. It is the redirection of engagement toward the ground, where engagement actually works. The same is true with the people we love, and this may be where the teaching grows most tender. We cannot make anyone be different. We cannot water another person's garden for them, no matter how clearly we can see the weeds from where we stand. What we can do is tend our side of every relationship. Our patience, our honesty, our willingness to listen without rehearsing a reply. Love that tries to possess and steer another person becomes a kind of drought for both people. Love that tends its own soil and trusts the other person with theirs becomes shelter. The people around us change when they change, in their own weather and their own season. Our garden, tended, simply makes it easier for them to want to. This is true even of the people who worry us most. A parent lies awake over a grown child's choices. A friend watches a friend struggle. The heart aches to reach in and rearrange things, and it cannot, and the ache of that is real. The old woman's wisdom holds here too. What is actually mine to do? To keep the door open, to keep the love steady, to be soft ground for them whenever they come, so that whatever rain finally falls in their life finds something alive waiting for it. That is not a small thing. It may be the largest thing one person can do for another. And every evening offers a homecoming to the small territory. Whatever happened today out in the vast field, whatever other people did or failed to do, whatever the sky sent or withheld, tonight you are back on your own land. The state of this heart, right now, is the one thing that was ever truly yours. It is a small holding. It is enough. It has always been enough. Let the mind put down the far fields for a while and rest here at home. Take whatever time you like, and then we will wander a little further down the path. Of all the teachings the Buddha gave across 45 years, the shortest one may be the deepest. It was given on a road, standing up, to a man in a hurry, and it can be said in a single breath. In the scene, let there be just the scene. In the herd, just the herd. In what is sensed, just what is sensed. In what is thought, just what is thought. That is nearly the whole of it. And at first hearing, it sounds almost like nothing. Of course, the scene is the scene. What else would it be? But sit with an ordinary mind for one ordinary minute and the teaching begins to reveal itself. Because for most of us, the scene is never just the scene. The scene arrives, and instantly the mind wraps it. A face is seen, and in the same instant comes the judgment, the history, the story of what that face thinks of us. A grey morning is seen, and with it, immediately, the mood, the forecast, the opinion about grey mornings. We live at one remove from the world, inside a running commentary about the world, and the commentary never stops to rest, so neither do we. The Buddha's shortest teaching is an invitation to step out of the commentary, and there is a story around it, one of the loveliest in the old texts. There was once a seeker who lived on the far western coast, a man who had practiced with great sincerity for many years and who was honored by everyone in his region as a holy man. And then one quiet night, a doubt rose in him and would not leave. He looked honestly at his own heart and saw that for all his practice and all the honor, he had not found the freedom he sought. The peace he showed the world was a robe he wore. Underneath it, he was still searching. Word had reached even his distant coast of a teacher in the east, an awakened one. And with the whole of his remaining strength, the seeker set out to find him. The old accounts say he crossed the breadth of the land with astonishing speed, resting little, so great was his longing. Through river country and forest country, past the fields and the walled towns, asking at every crossroads for news of the teacher, always moving. A man can travel like that only when something in him has finally become simple. All his questions had condensed into one question. All his roads had become one road. He arrived at last in the city where the Buddha was staying, went straight to the monastery, and was told the Buddha had already gone into the town for alms. So the seeker went into the town, searching the morning streets. It was the ordinary hour of an ordinary day. Shopkeepers were taking down their shutters. Children were being washed in doorways. Smoke rose from the first cooking fires, and the smell of bread was in the lanes. And there, moving quietly among the houses with his bowl, unhurried, at home in the plain morning, was the Buddha. The seeker went to him and bowed down right there in the road. "Teach me," he said. "Please, teach me the truth for my long-term happiness and freedom." The Buddha looked at him gently. "This is not the time. We are on the alms round." But the seeker had crossed a country, and something in him knew his moment had come. Life is uncertain, he said. Who can say how much time either of us has? Please, teach me now. Again the Buddha demurred, and again the man asked, with the whole of his heart in it. And on the third asking, the Buddha stopped, there in the morning street, and gave him the teaching. It took only a moment. Then, friend, you should train yourself in this way. In the seen, let there be just the seen. In the heard, just the heard. In what is sensed, just what is sensed. In what is thought, just what is thought. When for you the seen is just the seen, and the heard is just the heard, you will find that there is no self standing apart from it all, managing it, defending it. And when there is no one standing apart, there is no here, no beyond, no in between. This, just this, is the end of suffering. The old accounts say that as the seeker stood there in the road, hearing these words, his heart was released, completely, on the spot. All the years of practice had made him like dry kindling, and this one small flame was enough. The Buddha took up his bowl and continued quietly on his arms round. The whole teaching had taken less time than it takes to pour a cup of tea. And there is something fitting in where it happened. This deepest of teachings was given nowhere special. Standing in a street among the shutters and the cooking smoke, between one house and the next on an ordinary morning. A teaching about meeting the world directly was given directly, in the middle of the world, and the world went on around it, selling bread and washing children, entirely suitable just as it was. In the scene, just the scene. Consider what actually happens when this is tried, even for a moment. A sound comes, say a bird outside in the early dark. Ordinarily, the mind receives the sound and instantly goes to work. It names the bird, wonders about the hour, remembers another morning years ago, drifts to what must be done today. Within 2 seconds, the bird is buried under the bird's paperwork. But it is possible, and you have surely done it without calling it anything, to hear the sound and let it simply be a sound, arising out of silence, standing in the air for a moment, bright and complete, dissolving back into silence. Nothing added. When a sound is met this way, something remarkable happens in the one listening. The commentary pauses, and in the pause, there is a spaciousness, brief and clean, like a window opened in a stuffy room. The same is true of the other doors. A color can be just a color, and for one heartbeat, the lamplight on the wall is not information about the lamp. It is a small golden event, complete in itself. The weight of the blanket can be just warmth and weight, no story attached. Even a thought, and this is the subtlest of all, can be just a thought. Watched as it rises, allowed to stand a moment, watched as it goes. It does not have to be believed, argued with, or ridden like a horse into the next hour. In the thought, just the thought. Notice what disappears in such moments. What should be, disappears. What might happen, disappears. The endless comparing of this moment to some better moment disappears. What remains is what is actually here, and what is actually here, met directly, turns out to be enough. It always was. The commentary was the hunger, and the commentary was never going to feed itself. This is also why the world seems to grow more vivid whenever the mind grows quiet. People notice it on retreat, or in the first days in a new country, or sometimes simply on a slow Sunday. Colors seem deeper, food tastes of itself. The evening light on an ordinary street looks almost holy. The world has not changed on those days. The wrapping has thinned, For a little while, the scene is closer to just the scene, and it turns out that the unwrapped world was beautiful all along, in the plainest things, at no cost, on any day we are quiet enough to receive it. There is a story about how one old teacher showed this to a restless student without ever explaining a word of it. They lived in a small hermitage high on a mountain, beside a path that traders used to cross between valleys. One warm afternoon, teacher and student were returning from the lower village, and the teacher was thirsty. They came to the place where the path forded a shallow stream. Just ahead of them, a train of ox carts had crossed. The wheels and the hooves had churned the ford completely, and the water ran brown and clouded, thick with stirred mud. "Bring me some water to drink," said the teacher, settling himself under a pine. The student took the bowl to the stream, looked at the swirling mud, and came back. "It is filthy," he said. "The carts have just crossed. It is not fit to drink." "Bring me some water," the teacher said again, pleasantly. The student went back, stared helplessly at the brown water, stirred it a little with his hand, which only made it worse, and returned again. "Master, there is a spring on the far slope. I could reach it within the hour." "Sit down," said the teacher. "Rest. Then bring me some water." So the student sat. The afternoon was warm. The pine shifted overhead. At first he sat the way he did everything, restlessly, plucking at the grass, glancing at his teacher, who appeared to have fallen into a comfortable doze. Twice he nearly rose to argue for the spring on the far slope. But the afternoon was very warm, and the pine smelled sweet, and gradually his restlessness ran out of things to do. He watched the stream, because there was nothing else to do, and slowly, before his eyes, something happened that he had somehow never once watched in his whole life. The mud began to settle. The current carried some of the cloudiness away, downstream and gone. The heavier silt sank, drifting down through the water like dusk falling, and came to rest on the stream bed where it had always belonged. No one did anything. The stream did not strain. The mud was not fought with, lectured, or removed by hand. It settled on its own, because settling is what stirred water does when nobody keeps stirring it. By the time the shadows had lengthened a little, the ford ran clear. The student could see the pebbles on the bottom, brown and gold, and the small fish holding steady in the current. He filled the bowl and brought it to his teacher, and the water was sweet. The teacher drank and looked at his student over the rim of the bowl. "What did you do to make it clear?" the teacher asked. "Nothing," said the student. "I sat down. It cleared by itself." The teacher handed back the bowl. "So it is with the mind," he said. "Yours has been muddy for months. You have been stirring it with your own hand, trying to fix the cloudiness with more churning. Do what you did this afternoon. Sit down beside yourself. Stop stirring. The mud in the mind is like the mud in the stream. It knows how to settle. It has only been waiting for you to stop." Clarity is never manufactured. It is allowed. This may be the single most practical thing the meditative traditions ever discovered. We tend to approach the restless mind the way the student first approached the stream, as a problem requiring intervention. We stir at our thoughts, argue with our worries, scrub at our moods, and then wonder why the water will not clear. Every intervention is another hoof in the ford. The mind is self-settling. That is its nature, just as settling is the nature of stirred water. Given a little stillness, a little time, and a body at rest, the churning slows all by itself, the heavy things drift down, and the native clarity that was there all along comes quietly back into view. You have seen this on any evening you ever sat still long enough. The clarity was never created by the sitting. It was uncovered by it. This is worth remembering at the end of any full day. A day stirs the mind the way ox carts stir a ford. Conversations, decisions, small frictions, 100 crossings, and by nightfall the water is cloudy and everyone knows the feeling. The old teaching asks nothing heroic of a tired person. It only asks what the master asked. Sit down. Rest. Stop adding hooves. The evening itself will do the rest, because evenings are made for settling, and so are minds. The old masters loved one image for this above all others. Still water reflects the moon. When a pond is churned, the moon shatters across it in 1,000 fragments, and a person could stand at the edge all night trying to piece the fragments together and never succeed. When the pond is still, the moon simply appears, whole and silver, without anyone assembling it. The moon was never missing. Only the stillness was. And the pond does not have to be perfect. Even water that is only mostly calm holds a moon that is only slightly trembling. And a slightly trembling moon is still the moon, still silver, still whole enough to see by. Peace does not wait for the mind to become glass. It appears more and more clearly with every degree of settling. And this brings the whole evening's teaching round again in one motion. In the scene, just the scene, is another way of saying, stop stirring. The commentary is the churning. When it rests, even briefly, the world appears the way the moon appears in still water. Whole, immediate, needing nothing from us. And the peace we have been searching for is discovered exactly where the moon was. Here, the entire time, waiting on the stillness. So there is nothing to work at just now. Sounds are arriving. Let them be just sounds. The body is resting its weight. Let that be just warmth and weight. Thoughts drift through like silt in slowing water, and they are already settling, all by themselves, simply because you have sat down beside yourself and stopped stirring. Rest in the quiet for a few breaths, letting everything settle in its own time. And when the water feels clear, we will move gently on. Of all the questions ever carried up the road to the Buddha, one arrived more often than any other. It came from farmers and kings, from grieving mothers and curious scholars, dressed in 100 different phrasings, and underneath the phrasings, it was always the same question. What happens when we die? It is the oldest question we have. It sits quietly under all the other questions, the way bedrock sits under a field. And the Buddha's way with it was remarkable, because he understood something about questions that few teachers have understood. Some questions are doors, and answering them opens the way. And some questions are corridors, endless ones, where every answer only reveals another stretch of the same corridor. With those, the kind thing is to walk the questioner gently back out into the daylight. Tonight, we have been resting in a simple current. What we search for is already here. This module brings that current to the oldest question of all, and to the beautiful, surprising place the Buddha led one man who asked it. There is a story from the old texts about a householder who came to the Buddha with exactly this question and would not be put off. He was a practical man, a man of business, and he laid the matter out the way he would lay out an account book. "They say you are awakened," he began. "So I have come with the one question that matters. Tell me what happens when we die." The Buddha looked at him with warmth. "Why do you want to know?" The householder had his answer ready. "Because it decides everything. If I know what follows this life, I will know how to spend this life. A man who knows where the road ends knows how to walk it. So tell me, and I will arrange my living accordingly." "Then let us find out together," said the Buddha. "Suppose I told you what many teachers teach, that there are many lives, that this life is one bead on a long string, and that everything you do plants seeds that will ripen in lives to come. Suppose that were the answer. How would you live?" The householder frowned. "You are answering my question with a question. I am lending you your own lamp," said the Buddha. "Humor me." The householder considered it seriously, as a man of accounts considers a proposal. "Well," he said slowly, "I would be generous, open-handed. Whatever I gave would return to me down the string of lives, so giving would be the wisest investment there is. And I would be kind, because every kindness would sow kindness waiting for me ahead. And I would live honestly, with integrity, because a clean heart now would be the foundation of every life to come. Yes, generous, kind, and true. That is how I would live." "Well said," the Buddha replied. "Now suppose the opposite. Suppose I told you there is only one life. This one. No string of beads, no seeds ripening beyond, nothing before and nothing after. This brief walk between two mysteries, and that is all. How then would you live?" The householder sat back. This required more thought, and he gave it more thought. The afternoon moved around them. "If this is the only life," he said at last, and his voice had changed a little, "then I would be generous, because what sense would there be in hoarding? You cannot carry a single coin out of a world like that. Better the joy of giving it away, while there are hands to receive it. And I would be kind, kinder than ever, because every person I meet only this once. There would be no future life in which to make anything right. Only today. And I would live honestly, with integrity, because if this one life is all I have, then my own dignity is the whole of my treasure, and I would not sell it at any price." He stopped. His own words seemed to be catching up with him. "Generous, kind, and true," said the Buddha gently. "The same answer." The householder stared at him. He had come with one question, and he was leaving with something better than an answer. He began to laugh, quietly, at himself and at the wonder of it. "The same answer," he repeated. "Whichever way the mystery falls. Many lives or one life, the good way to live is the same way." He rose and bowed. "You have not told me what happens when we die." "No," the Buddha agreed. "And I find I no longer need to know." And the old story says he walked home through the evening at an easy pace, a man whose accounts had finally balanced, and he lived the rest of his days, generous, kind, and true, and slept well every night of them. The same answer, whichever way the mystery falls. Look at what the householder discovered. All roads out of the great question lead back to the same three plain instructions, and every one of the three is something to be done today. Not believed. Done. The question about death turned out to be, at its root, A question about this afternoon, this household, this handful of people we will see tomorrow. The mystery keeps its secret, and the secret turns out not to be needed for anything. The living is the same either way, and a person can set the whole anxious question down without losing a single thing needed for a good life. Consider the three, one at a time, because each is its own small doorway to peace. Generosity first. In the Buddha's teaching, giving is listed as the very first practice, before meditation, before philosophy, before everything. This is no accident. Generosity is the direct, physical practice of letting go, the theme we sat with earlier tonight, performed with the hands. Every act of giving, however small, a meal shared, an hour of attention, the last seat on the bench, loosens the grip a little, and the giver feels the loosening as warmth. You have felt it. Everyone has. The strange arithmetic where giving something away leaves you with more. The Buddha said that if people knew what he knew about the fruits of giving, they would not eat a single meal without sharing some part of it. And notice that the poorest person alive is never too poor for this practice. There is always attention to give, and patience, and the full, unhurried listening that has become one of the rarest gifts in any age. An old teaching tells of a woman who had nothing to offer a passing monk except a cup of plain water from her well, drawn carefully and offered with both hands, and it says the merit of that cup was equal to a king's banquet, because generosity is measured at the heart, never at the market. Then kindness. If we meet each person only this once, and in the deepest sense we always do, since neither of us will ever again be exactly who we are tonight, then every meeting is a small, complete lifetime of its own. It has a birth, a middle, and a parting. Kindness is simply the recognition of how brief and unrepeatable each meeting is. Nothing needs to be added to the people we love. Only the recognition that they are here now, and that now is the only place anyone has ever been loved. And integrity, the quiet third. Living so that the person lying down at night is a person one can rest beside. The old texts say that the practitioner of virtue sleeps easily and wakes easily, and everyone who has ever lain awake regretting a harsh word knows exactly what those texts mean. Integrity is often praised as a duty. It is more accurately a comfort. A clear conscience is the softest pillow there is, and unlike every other pillow, we sew it ourselves, choice by choice, in the small hours of ordinary days. And the three practices feed one another, quietly, the way streams feed a river. Generosity softens the heart, and a soft heart finds kindness easy. Kindness clears the conscience, and a clear conscience makes honesty natural, because there is nothing to hide. A person who tends any one of the three finds the other two growing at its edges, unplanted, the way wildflowers appear at the edge of a watered field. This is why the Buddha could hand the whole path to busy farmers and merchants in 3 words and trust it to unfold. It unfolds by itself. Goodness turns out to be less like a wall we must build and more like a seed that mostly needs us to stop standing on it. One more story belongs beside it, about a traveler and a handful of berries. She was crossing a range of high mountains on foot, on her way to the valley where her sister lived, and she had misjudged the length of the day's stage. The path she was following ran along the face of the mountain, a narrow ledge of a path, safe enough for careful feet in daylight, and the daylight was leaving. She came around a shoulder of rock and saw the truth of her situation plainly. Ahead, the path wound on for hours before the next shelter. Behind, it was hours back to the last one. and the dusk was coming up out of the valleys like slow blue water. To walk that ledge in the dark would be foolish. There was nothing dangerous in where she stood, a wide, grassy step of the mountain, room enough to sit and even to lie down, but there was no going forward and no going back until morning. She sat down on the grass with her pack, and for a while she did what anyone would do. She argued with the situation. She should have started earlier. She should have taken the valley road. Her sister would worry. Tomorrow's walking would be long. She sat on the beautiful mountain, in the beautiful dusk, thoroughly occupied with the morning she could not reach and the afternoon she could not change. And then, close to her hand, she noticed the berries. A wild bush was growing out of a fold in the rock, and it was heavy with dark, ripe mountain berries, the small, sweet kind that never grow in the lowlands. Without thinking much about it, she picked one and ate it. It was perfectly ripe, sweet, with the faint, wild sharpness under the sweetness, still holding the warmth of the vanished sun. It was, she realized with some surprise, the best thing she had tasted in a year. She sat back and looked around her, as though she had just arrived, which in a way she had. The dusk had deepened to the color of plums. The first stars were coming out above the peaks, enormous and close, the way stars only are in high places. Far below, the lights of some village she would never visit were kindling one by one, like sparks from a settling fire. The evening air smelled of stone and grass, and the bush beside her was full of berries, and she had the whole night, and there was nowhere to go and nothing to do, for the first time in as long as she could remember. She ate the berries slowly, one at a time, watching the stars thicken. She would tell her sister afterward that she had been forced to spend a night on the open mountain, and that it was the finest night of the whole journey. Trapped, she kept saying, laughing at the word. Trapped in the one place I finally noticed where I was. Yesterday is the path behind, and it cannot be walked again. Tomorrow is the path ahead, and it cannot be walked early. Every person alive is standing on the ledge between them, on the wide, grassy step of this present moment, and the whole art of living, the old masters insist, comes down to noticing the berries. They are always there. In the most ordinary evening there is something ripe. The warmth of the room, the taste of tea, the particular quality of lamplight, or the sound of rain arriving, or the simple animal comfort of a body at rest after a long day. These things seem small only because the mind is usually elsewhere, arguing with the path behind or straining toward the path ahead. Met directly, in the way we practiced earlier tonight, the scene just the scene, the sweet just the sweet, they turn out to be what they always were. The actual taste of being alive, offered fresh every moment, free of charge, to whoever is present enough to receive it. The traveler needed the mountain to trap her before she could notice where she was. Most of us are the same, and life obliges us now and then, with an illness that slows us, a delay that strands us, an evening when the plans fall through and nothing can be done. These interruptions arrive looking like misfortunes, and a surprising number of them are remembered afterward as the finest night of the whole journey. The old teaching simply asks whether we might learn to notice the berries without needing to be trapped. Whether an ordinary Tuesday evening, with nothing wrong and nothing special, might be received the way she received the stars. And this is where the householder's discovery and the traveler's discovery turn out to be the same discovery. However, the great mystery falls. The instructions are identical. Be generous, be kind, be true, and taste the berries. All four can only be done now. All four, done now, are the good life entire. The question of what comes after can rest, unanswered and harmless, like a mountain in the dark, while we eat our small sweet handful under the stars. Take a slow breath here and let the evening hold you for a moment. When you feel ready to walk on, the path will still be there, and we will follow it together. There is a story told about a celebrated writer of the last century, a man who had spent his whole life exploring the great spiritual traditions of the world. He had studied the philosophies of East and West. He had written famous books about consciousness and mysticism and the search for meaning. Near the end of his life, someone asked him the question everyone wanted to ask. After all of it, all the study, all the seeking, all the years, what had he learned? What was the essence? And he said he was almost embarrassed by his answer because it sounded so plain after such a long journey. It comes down, he said, to simply being a little kinder. A lifetime of the world's wisdom distilled to one sentence a child could understand. And the traditions themselves agree with him. When the Dalai Lama is asked to name his religion, he has answered many times that his religion is kindness. And the Buddha, who mapped the mind with a subtlety no one has surpassed, taught that all the practices, all the philosophy, all the training ripen into one fragrance, and the fragrance is compassion. In one of the most beloved of the old discourses, he said that just as a mother protects her only child with her very life, so should we cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings. Tonight we have followed the thread home again and again. What we search for is already here. This module asks, what, exactly, is found when we arrive? And the answer of the whole tradition is the same plain answer the old writer gave. What is found, under everything, is the kind heart. It was there before our opinions. It will outlast our memories. It is the deepest thing in us, and the stories in this module are about how it shows itself. Let us spend a little while with an old man who forgot nearly everything and with what remained. He had been, in his day, one of the most respected men in his region. A healer and a scholar, the one others traveled to consult, known throughout the valleys for two things: his learning and his graciousness. It was said that no one, high or low, had ever left his door feeling small. He lived a long life, and in his last years, as happens to some, his memory began to leave him. It went slowly, the way evening light goes. First the recent things, then the names. Then, gradually, the faces, even the dear ones. His wife cared for him in the old house with the courtyard, and the seasons turned, and he became an old man who sat in the sun and could no longer say what year it was, or who had come to visit, or, on some days, who the kind woman was who brought his tea. One evening, two old friends came to the house for dinner. They had known him for 40 years. They had traveled with him, celebrated with him, mourned with him. They knew, from his wife's letters, how things stood, and they came anyway, with a gift of fruit and their hearts a little braced. It was the old man himself who opened the door. He stood in the doorway, lamplight behind him, and looked at these two people on his threshold. And it was clear, completely clear, that he did not know them. 40 years of friendship had gone wherever the years go. His eyes moved over their faces, searching, finding nothing. A silence stretched, His wife, coming up behind him, put her hand to her mouth. And then the old man smiled. It was his same smile, the one the whole region had known, rising up from somewhere deeper than memory. He stepped back and opened the door wide. "I don't know who you are," he said warmly. "But whoever you are, please come in and enjoy my home." They came in. They ate together in the courtyard, and the old man presided as he had always presided, filling cups, offering the best pieces, delighting in his guests. He did not know their names. He asked twice where they had traveled from, and twice forgot. It did not matter in the least. At one point in the evening, one of the friends, moved by everything, tried gently to remind him. "We knew each other once," he said. "Long ago. We traveled the coast road together, the three of us, the year of the great festival." The old man listened to this with pleasure, as though hearing a fine story about strangers. "Did we?" he said. "Then we were fortunate men." He raised his cup to them. "And we are fortunate again tonight. Look at this table. Look at this evening. However many times we have been friends, let us add one more." The evening was warm and full of laughter, and when the two friends walked home under the stars, one of them said what both were thinking. "He has forgotten everything, and the kindness is still there. The kindness is completely untouched. Everything he had learned had been stored in his memory, and the memory had emptied like a house at the end of a lease. But the kindness had never been stored in the memory. It had been worked into him, act by act, over a whole lifetime, the way the grain is worked into wood. It was in his hands and his smile and his open door. It was by then simply what he was made of." Underneath that evening sits one of our oldest fears, the fear of what remains when the rest is gone. The old man answers it from his doorway. What remains is what was practiced. Every gracious act, it turns out, is a stroke of the plane along the grain. No single stroke seems like much. Decades of them make a person whose very substance is welcome, so that even when the mind can no longer find the names, the door still opens wide. The Buddha gave this practice a name, metta, the deliberate cultivation of loving kindness, and he described its logic in a teaching that has comforted people for 25 centuries. "Hatred never ends by hatred," he said. "By love alone does it end. This is an ancient law." He meant it as practically as a physician means a prescription. Resentment held is a hot coal held. Kindness extended, even in small and awkward doses, cools the hand that extends it first of all. The practice itself, as it has been handed down, is disarmingly simple. One sits quietly and wishes beings well, in widening circles, the way ripples widen on a pond. May you be safe. May you be well. May you be at ease. It begins with someone easy to love, because the heart warms fastest there, the way kindling catches before the log. Then oneself, which many people find the hardest circle of all, and the tradition is patient about this and insists on it gently, because a heart that has no kindness for its own keeper pours from a cracked jug. Then the circles widen. The neighbor, the stranger, the difficult person, all beings everywhere, without fence or border. Practiced over time, the old texts promise. This softens a life the way water softens ground, slowly, thoroughly, from below. And there is a further reach to this kindness, one that the tradition considers the true test of the heart's depth. It is the kindness we extend inward to what arrives at our own door. Because things do arrive. Every heart has its evening visitors. an old grief that shows up unannounced, a worry that knocks after midnight, a regret wearing the same coat it wore 10 years ago. The ordinary response is the response of a frightened householder. Bolt the door, darken the windows, pretend no one is home. And every heart knows how well that works. The visitor simply keeps knocking, patient as winter, sometimes for years. The old man in the story, without knowing it, models the other way. I don't know who you are, but whoever you are, come in. To meet what rises in one's own heart with that greeting, to let the grief sit down, to pour the worry a cup of tea, to let the old regret warm itself at the fire for an evening, this is compassion turned inward, and it changes everything it touches. Welcomed visitors, it turns out, do not stay forever. They say what they came to say, they rest a while, and they leave by the same door, quieter than they arrived. It was only the ones we barred out who camped on the doorstep for years. This inner hospitality asks less than it seems to. It does not require solving the visitor, or agreeing with everything it says, or letting it rearrange the furniture. A good host is warm and remains the host. The grief may sit by the fire. It does not get to run the house. There is great strength in this kind of welcome, the strength of the bamboo that bends in the storm while the rigid oak splits beside it. What looks like vulnerability, the open door, the soft answer, is the most durable posture a heart can take, because a heart that can receive anything can be threatened by nothing. There is another story, a very gentle one, about an old woman and a tree. She had lived a long and full life in a house at the edge of an orchard country, and she had reached the season when a long life draws toward its close. This was no tragedy in her case, and she refused to let anyone treat it as one. She had raised her children and seen their children. She had loved well and been well loved. Her days had grown small and slow, and she spent them in a bed her family had moved, at her request, beside the big window in the main room, because outside that window stood the tree. It was a great old maple she had known for 50 years, the companion of her whole married life. She had watched it through every season from her kitchen. Now she watched it from her pillow, and it was autumn. Day by day, the tree let go. Its green deepened to gold, and its gold to a soft flame color, and then, one by one and without hurry, it began to release its leaves. Each leaf went in its own time. Some spun, some drifted, some let go in the morning stillness and some in the evening wind. The tree did not grieve them, and it did not cling to them. It had done this 50 times before. It knew the way. The old woman watched, and something in her kept company with the tree. Her family noticed that she spoke of it often, and always with a kind of quiet gladness. "Look at it," she said to her granddaughter one afternoon, when the branches had grown nearly bare and the light came through them in wide golden ribbons. "All summer it holds its leaves, and it holds them well. And when the season turns, it lets them go, and it lets them go well. And look how beautiful it is, both ways. It was beautiful full, and it is beautiful letting go." She patted the girl's hand. "Everything I ever worried about losing, I see now, was a leaf. And the tree is not the leaves. The tree was never the leaves." She slipped away in her sleep in the first week of winter, easily, the family said, like the last leaf going, and outside the window the great maple stood open-armed and serene, resting before spring. Her granddaughter, who grew old herself in time, told the story all her life. She said her grandmother and the tree had taught her the same lesson together, in the same window, and that because of them she had never again been able to see autumn as a sadness. It was a letting go, done well, by something that knew the way. Both of them, the old man at his door and the old woman at her window, show the same deep truth from two sides. When everything held is finally released, what remains is what we are. And what we are, at the bottom, when the grasping has fallen away like leaves, is warmth. The tradition stakes everything on this. Beneath the opinions, beneath the memories, beneath the long story of our days, the heart's native condition is kindness, and every practice we have shared tonight, the listening, the letting go, the settling, is finally just the clearing away of what covers it. In the old monasteries there is a beloved image of compassion, a figure with 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands. The eyes are for seeing the sorrows of the world, every one of them, none too small to notice. The hands are for meeting each sorrow with help, each hand holding a different tool, because no two sorrows need exactly the same touch. It sounds like a description of a goddess. It is really a description of a possibility, the possibility in every human heart, realized one eye and one hand at a time. Every person who ever noticed a sorrow and moved gently toward it has been, for that moment, one of the 1,000 hands. And no memory is required for it, no learning, no achievement. Only the open door. Let a soft stillness gather here for a little while. Rest in whatever warmth you find, and when you are ready, we will take the last quiet stretch of the path together. A beloved Zen master of the last century, one of those who first carried the tradition across the ocean, used to reassure his students in a way no one expected. They would come to him discouraged, certain they were failing at meditation, certain everyone else was progressing while they sat still as stumps, year after year, with nothing to show. And he would tell them about walking in fog. Practice, he said, is like walking through a fine mist. When you walk out into a heavy rain, you know at once that you are getting wet. It is dramatic. But a fine mountain fog is different. You walk in it, and you feel almost nothing. No single moment of the walk makes you wet. And yet, if you keep walking, mile after quiet mile, you arrive home, soaked through, wet to the skin, without ever having noticed the moment it happened. So there is no need, he told them, to worry about progress. You cannot become wise all of a sudden, and you do not have to. Just keep walking in the fog. Be sincere, be present, one ordinary moment after another, and the way itself will soak you through. He knew what his discouraged students did not yet know, which is that the feeling of not progressing is nearly universal among people who are, in fact, progressing. The fog gives no receipts. A person sits quietly for a season and can point to nothing, and meanwhile their family notices they are gentler at dinner. A person practices patience for a year, certain it has failed, and one day realizes an insult that would once have burned for a week now passes through in an afternoon. The change happened the way all deep change happens, below the waterline of self-observation, where the mist does its slow and thorough work. This last module of our evening is about that fog, about the strange and comforting discovery, waiting at the end of every spiritual road, that there was never a finish line on it. Nothing to attain, nowhere to get to, only a path that was already home the whole way, which is of course the single thread we have followed all night. There is a story about a young monk who arrived at a mountain monastery with very large plans. He was bright, and he knew it. He had read the accounts of the great awakened ones, and he had decided, with the beautiful confidence of the young, that he would become one of them, and quickly. He presented himself to the abbot, an unhurried old woman who had led the community for 30 years, and announced his intention. "I have come to attain enlightenment," he said. "I am prepared to work harder than anyone. Give me the deepest practices. I do not want to waste time." The old abbot looked him over with what might have been amusement, though her face barely moved. "Good," she said. "We rise before dawn. Your work will be to carry water from the spring to the kitchen and to chop and gather the firewood. Begin tomorrow." He waited for the rest. There was no rest. "And the deep practices?" he asked. "Water," said the abbot, "and wood." He was disappointed, but he was also determined, so he began. Each morning in the dark he walked the stone path down to the spring, filled the 2 great buckets, and carried them up, feeling the yoke settle into his shoulders, hearing the water shift with each step. Each afternoon he split wood in the yard, the swing, the crack, the clean smell of the opened grain, and stacked it against the coming winter. In the first year he did all of it resentfully, composing speeches in his head about wasted talent. In the second year he did it impatiently, hurrying through the buckets to reach the meditation hall, where he assumed the real practice lived. Somewhere in the third year, on an icy morning, he slipped on the stone path and spilled both buckets, and sat down where he fell, and laughed until his eyes ran, at himself, at the ice, at the whole grand campaign of his ambition lying there in the spilled water. He filled the buckets again and carried them up. It was, though he did not know it yet, the first trip he had ever made with an empty head and a light heart. Seasons passed. He asked again about the deep practices and was told water and wood. Years passed. Slowly, without ever deciding to, he stopped asking. And something else happened, so gradually that he could never afterwards say when. The walk to the spring stopped being the thing before the real thing. It became the thing. He knew every stone of the path in every weather. He knew the sound of the buckets in summer and their different sound in frost. Carrying water, he carried water, wholly, the way earlier that evening we spoke of hearing rain. Chopping wood, he chopped wood, and the swing of the axe was as complete an act as any prayer in any temple on earth. He found he was profoundly content, and that the contentment had no cause he could point to. It had simply accumulated, like fog soaking a walker. Many years later, a new young man arrived at the monastery, bright, hurried, full of large plans, and was sent to help with the morning water. Halfway up the stone path he burst out with the question, "You have been here so long. Tell me honestly, what did you do before enlightenment came into your life?" The older monk smiled. "I carried water. I chopped wood. And now? What is different now, after all these years of practice? What do you do now?" "I carry water," he said, shifting the yoke gently. "I chop wood." The young man stared at him, waiting for the secret. And the older monk laughed, because he remembered waiting for it too, on this exact path, at that exact age. "Nothing changed," he said, "and everything did. The water is the same water, my friend. The wood is the same wood. The one carrying them is at peace." That was the whole journey. It goes from here, and he touched his head, to here, and he touched his chest. It is the longest journey in the world, and you can make the entire trip between the spring and the kitchen. Nothing changed, and everything did. Every deep practitioner in every tradition ends up saying some version of this, usually with the same laugh. Because the treasure at the end of the path turns out to be the path. The ordinary day, fully inhabited, was the awakened life the whole time, and all the seeking was just the long process of becoming quiet enough to notice. A teacher was once asked whether there was anything a person could do to attain enlightenment, and he answered, "There is as little you can do as you can do to make the sun rise in the morning." His startled student asked, "Then what is the use of all this practice?" And the teacher said, "To make sure you are not asleep when the sun rises." That is the whole role of practice, held rightly. The sun needs no help. The dawn is not an achievement. Sitting quietly, listening, letting go, carrying water with attention, these do not manufacture the light. They keep the eyes open, and the sun, for its part, has never once failed to rise. An old saying from the tradition puts the same wisdom in a single line. When you do good, the results are good. That is all. If you want peace, be peaceful. If you want love in your life, love. There is no machinery between the seed and the fruit, no committee that reviews applications, no distant date on which results are issued. The kindness given this morning is already at work by evening. The moment of presence is its own reward, paid in full on the spot. The path and the destination were never two things. There is a spaciousness that comes into a life when this is finally accepted. The self-improvement project, that long and weary campaign, can stand down. Nothing tonight needs to be transcended or upgraded. The teaching is awakening rather than improvement, and the difference is everything. Improvement says, become someone better. Awakening says, notice what you already are, beneath the fretting, and the noticing itself is the transformation. It is a fog, and you have been walking in it all evening. You are wetter than you think. There is one more small story for the road, about a healer who understood how a day should begin. She was the most skilled physician in her province, the one summoned when no one else could help, and people marveled at her steadiness. In the gravest hours she was calm. Through the longest nights of her work she was patient and clear, and her presence alone, families said, was half the medicine. A young physician who was studying under her finally asked about it. Everyone wants to know your secret. Some say it is a special herb. Some say it is a breathing method from the mountains. The old healer laughed. I will show you my secret. Come to my house at dawn. He arrived the next morning expecting rare tinctures, secret exercises. Instead, through the window, in the first grey light, he saw his teacher seated at an old stringed instrument. For a full hour, she played. Slow old airs, the songs of her grandmother's village, unhurried, imperfect, entirely absorbed. She missed notes and did not care. She played one melody twice because she loved it. The light strengthened, the birds began, and she played, a woman completely at home in an hour that belonged to nothing but this. Then she rose, closed the instrument, and went out to her long day of work, carrying the hour with her. That is the secret, she told him at the gate. Every morning before I tend anyone, I water my own root. The music asks nothing of me, and I ask nothing of it. No one is healed by it. Nothing is produced. It goes nowhere, and it is the most important hour of my day. A lamp cannot light a house while its own oil runs dry. Whatever your music is, find it and be unreasonable about keeping it. Water your own root. It is a fitting instruction for the last stretch of an evening like this one, because listening to old stories in the quiet, letting the mind settle, letting the heart soften, this is exactly that kind of hour. It asks nothing. It produces nothing. It goes nowhere. And it is the oil in the lamp. An old hermit poet of Japan, who lived alone in a small hut on a mountainside, left behind a picture of the contented life, so simple it can be held in one hand. In his sack, a few measures of rice. By his hearth, a bundle of firewood for the evening fire. Rain falling softly on the roof at nightfall. And the poet inside, at ease, stretching out both feet in answer to no question at all. That was the whole inventory. He wrote that if anyone asked him for the mark of enlightenment or delusion, he could not say, and that wealth and honor seemed to him nothing but drifting dust. He had his rice, his fire, his rain, his 2 feet stretched toward the warmth. The evening asked nothing further of him, and he asked nothing further of the evening. Every teaching we have gathered tonight is folded into that small picture. The questions resting, the story set down, the few known things sufficient. The one who knows, at home, the grip, open, the garden, tended and quiet, the water, clear, the berries, tasted, the kind heart, warming the room, and nothing to attain, because the rice and the fire and the rain are already here, and were here all along, and the long search ends the way the little girl's night in the forest ended, with everything that was lost found sleeping in the same clearing. If there is a question worth carrying out of this evening, let it be a soft one, held with no urgency at all. What would it be like to live a little more like this? A little kinder, a little more open-handed, a little more here. There is no need to answer tonight. Questions like that answer themselves over time, the way fog soaks a walker, the way water clears, the way a tree lets go of its leaves when the season is right, without a single decision being made. The path has brought us home, which is where it started. Let everything rest now, easily and completely. Take all the time you like in this quiet, and when you are ready, we will share a few last words together. And so the evening's path comes to rest, back where it began. We set out with a flock of birds, crossing 7 mountains to find their king, and we found him where they did. In the still water, looking back, it is worth walking the whole path once more, slowly, the way you might walk back through a garden at dusk, touching nothing, just seeing where you have been. We began with the questions of the heart, and with the discovery that they were never really asking for answers. They were the heart's way of leaning closer to life. A young monk asked 100 questions on a mountain, and the gate he was looking for opened in the sound of the rain. Then came the stories, the ones we inherit and collect and argue over. A widow received 3 beautiful answers to one question, and found her peace in what she herself knew when all 3 were set aside. A seeker traveled the world for 40 years and came home to a bench in a garden where the same plain truth had been patiently waiting. Sit, breathe, notice things. We found how short the true curriculum is. Things change. Life comes in pairs. Grasping tightens, and letting go eases. A grieving woman went door to door through a whole town looking for a house that sorrow had never visited, and found instead the whole human family, lighting its lamps and going on. We met the one who knows. The quiet awareness that has been with you through every year of your life, calm beneath every weather of thought. An old seamstress searched the road for a needle she had dropped inside her house, because the light seemed better out there, and a little girl fell asleep against a warm stone and woke to cry out that she had found her father. What we are looking for is doing the looking. It has been flying with us the entire way. We felt the difference between the closed hand and the open one. A stream gave itself to the wind and crossed the desert it could never push through, and lost nothing that was truly its own. We came home to the small garden that was always ours to tend, and left the rain to the sky. We sat by a muddy ford and watched the water clear itself, all on its own, the moment the stirring stopped. We heard the shortest teaching ever given on an ordinary morning street. In the scene, just the scene. In the herd, just the herd. And we learned how to live inside the great mystery without needing it solved. Generous, kind, and true, whichever way the mystery falls, with a handful of wild berries eaten slowly under the stars. We watched kindness outlast memory itself, an old man at his door saying, "Whoever you are, come in and enjoy my home." We watched a great maple let go of its leaves, beautifully, when the season turned, because the tree was never the leaves. And we ended in the fog, where progress cannot be measured and does not need to be, carrying water, chopping wood, soaked through with the way itself. One thread ran through all of it, and it runs through this moment too. What you have been searching for has been here the whole time. It is here now. It does not live in the next teaching or the next year or the next version of you. It lives in the quiet that is already holding you, in the breath that has kept you company across your entire life without once asking for thanks. So the searching can rest now. Truly rest. There is nothing you need to remember from tonight. Nothing to practice before morning. Nothing to become. The stories will keep themselves. The teachings are already at work in you, the way mist works on a walker, and by morning you will be wetter than you think. The old masters would say it plainly. You are already home. You have been home the whole time. The lamps are lit, the fire is warm, and the rain on the roof is asking nothing of you at all. Let the body settle a little deeper now, wherever it rests. Let the weight of it be held completely, the way the warm stone held the sleeping child, the way the earth has held every tired traveler since travelers began. The jaw can soften, the hands can open, the shoulders can lay down the day. Each breath out is a small letting go, and the body already knows how. It has been practicing all your life. Whatever this day held, it is complete. It joins all the other days, the way leaves join the ground, and the tree stands easy through the night. Whatever tomorrow holds, it will arrive in its own time, over its own mountain pass, and you will meet it with the same quiet awareness that has been keeping you company all evening. The one who knows is still here. It does not sleep, so you can. Perhaps somewhere in the coming days, one of tonight's small companions will visit you. A wren on a long journey. An old woman with a bucket in a dry season. A bench in a garden. They have a way of returning at the right moments, these stories, surfacing quietly when a day grows tangled, saying what they came to say. Let them come and go as they please. They are good guests, and they know the way to your door now. Thank you for walking this path tonight. It is an old path, worn smooth by 25 centuries of tired and hopeful feet, and it was good to walk it in your company. May your heart be open, your grip be soft, and your life be simple. May you be safe. May you be well. May you be at ease. And may all beings everywhere, in every house where the lamps are going out one by one, rest as easily as you are resting now. Sleep well,